I'm going to have to do some more work on the VVT setup on this AJ30 engine. And well, let's go back to basics a little bit. So here we have from the S-Type, Jaguar S-Type powertrain manual, the diagram showing the level of advance and retard. So inlet camshaft retarded, it says, showing a small amount of overlap between the exhaust and the inlet valve, and as we know, that's good for idle. I think we know that anyway. Whereas large amounts of overlap, inlet camshaft advanced, that's not very good for idle at all. So I think that this is the position we're running at the moment, retarded, and ideally we'd like to get advanced going under certain engine conditions. Now there is another element which comes into play, which is IMT. Now IMT consists of valves on the inlet manifold, which I can show you in a second, and they vary effectively the length of the inlet where it comes around and eventually goes into the engine. And there's two valves, one at the back, one on the top. And as it shows here, and it's not very obvious to be honest what the advantages are, but in this diagram you can see both IMT valves are closed and the airflow is going what appears to be the shortest route into the engine. Then with one open and the other closed, you appear to have got a join, if you like, between the left and the right banks. So I'm not sure what effect that has, to be honest with you. So it's not just a question of long and short. And then when both valves are open, it's hardly visible what the difference is. In fact, I'm looking at the diagram now and I can't see. Okay, there's a join here between left and right bank, which this one doesn't have. So in this case there's two joins between the left and right bank. So as I say, not sure exactly what effect that is likely to have. I did think it was kind of just long and short, but it clearly isn't quite that simple. Anyway, with all that in mind, this is what Jaguar came up with when they were designing the engine, and this shows the torque which they seek to achieve with it, which is all well and good. Well, it's got some good numbers, 300 foot-pounds up there I think is it the scale? Doesn't give a scale, does it? Oh, Newton meters actually, rather than foot-pounds. Same thing in a way. I'm not sure how the numbers compare, but anyway, set that aside for a minute. So what they're showing here is that they'd like to have the top inlet valve closed, open and then closed, and the side one closed, open and closed, and then the advanced, and this is one thing which I wonder about on the VVT itself, it should be advanced all the way from 0 to 5.5 and then retarded after that. Now that seems to be wrong to me. If we go back to our VVT valve, someone's moving a lawnmower. Go back to our VVT valve, so that's showing retarded. Retarded is the one with not so much overlap. So retarded ought to be surely the position at lower engine speeds, and it actually shows the exact opposite. It shows advanced and then going to retarded later on. I think that's an error in this document for the reasons I've stated and the reasons we've observed, where the idle significantly gets worse when I for a little while had the VVT inverted. So I think we can probably regard these as being the wrong way around. Maybe they were as confused as I was about that valve being open and closed. Where, as I've said before, I thought since the valve was open by default, that must mean that VVT, high power mode, let's say VVT, is enabled by default, whereas it looks like that's the exact opposite. Anyway, let's not go back to that again. But anyway, these are the RPMs which are recommended, if you like, by a Jaguar. So go to the other VVT position at 5250 and then tops out at 7000. So mentally I'm going to say those two labels are actually inverted. But one of the other questions that this goes with about IMT is it talks about closed, open, closed, closed, open, closed, and I don't know what that means in terms of the energizing of the IMT operating valves. So I'm going to go over to the engine and check what that actually means in practice. So let's go over here for a moment. Okay, so I'm going to take this one off. Well, these valves appear to work with a simple 12 volt on-off type of control. Very simple. I've had this off before. And there it goes. Okay, so first thing we can see, getting it back into the right, yes, there's a bit of an O-ring going on around here, which also makes it stick in there a bit. And if we take a look inside, actually, let's get you off there. I think you can see a machined face there. It's also a bit greasy. I'm not sure why that is or whether it matters. Don't know, but anyway, it's not taking any notice of that at the moment. So, right, so put your back. So taking a look at the valve, it does rather appear that it's closed by default, because it's 90 degrees across the tube, as it were, in line with that machined face I just showed. Now, one of the things I can do, I'll turn that upside down for a second, from the ME360 management system, and there we have it. So this is our air valve, slow toggling, and it's just a relay. On the end of the wire there's a relay, it's switching on and off, and that's what it does. So if I switch that off, so that is in an off position, it's not powered at all. And it would appear that off is indeed off, or closed if you wish. Whereas if I go test on, there it goes. So that's now open, I think. Yeah, so that's now parallel to the airflow. So you have it. When it's on, it's open, and when it's closed, it's off, and that's really what we wanted to know. So I'll just stick that back on now. So as we saw the other day with the test drive, On the VVT side, the cam angles were unstable. Now it's not 100% clear to me why that is, but what we do know is that these engines are meant, these early ones, early AJ30 engines, are meant to only have 2 positions of VVT rather than being truly variable. And that would imply that the solenoid, the oil control solenoid, is simply controlled to be off or on rather than being controlled by a PWM. But nevertheless, that may not be the only thing involved here, and we need some experimentation. So, as I mentioned, as well as the closed loop VVT control, we also have what Motorsport Electronics called software. What do they call it? I'm going to put you on the screen now. A form of VVT which they call software, or SWVCT, which I read as being basically the same as Honda VTEC. So it is actually more of an on-off type of solution. Now I haven't enabled this, but I have put that into software VCT mode. I haven't run the engine since I changed it. But we can also refer to the VVT, which seems to be showing, well, as I've said, I think this is wrong. So retarded up until about 5,000. Now I have heard, thanks Kev by the way, I have heard that suitable results can be had using a switching speed of, I think he said 3,500. So maybe that's what I'll try, because frankly it's a lot easier to achieve 3,500 RPM on the road, especially around here, than it is to get 5,250 or whatever it is it says on this chart here. So I shall just refer back now to the Motorsport Electronics manual regarding software VCT. Oh, here we are, yeah. So this chart here, so VTEC, Honda VTEC, seems to have several trigger modes, basically an amount of load and an amount of RPM on and off. Now I'm sure it says 6 points, there's only 4 that I can see there. There's a hysteresis. I'm going to ignore that for a moment. But what I might do, I'll mimic this. So we've got RPM along this scale, and we've got load on this scale. So I'm going to assume that there's no VVT below 30% load. There's full VVT at 100% between 2 RPM figures that we choose. Now again, I'm not going to go with 5,500 RPM because that's impossible to test drive around here. So that's what I think I've already got something in like this. So we need a figure of on RPM 2, on RPM 1, off RPM 1, off RPM 2. So we'll give it 5,000 each side, 500 RPM each side of a power band that we choose. And I'm not going to choose this one for the reasons I've just said. So I'm going to go with 4,000 to 6,000, let's say. And then 500 RPM each side of that. And it looks like we're on, off. Number 1 is the basic setting. RPM 1, 6 and 7, but we're going to go to 4 and 6. In fact, it looks like I've put in here 7, so I'm going to put in here 6 actually. And primary load of 30, and then off we're going to go, yeah, I've already done some of this, haven't I? 6, 6, 5. Okay, so this is VVT-A, so we now need to copy the same thing over to VVT-B, which we will do into software VCT, which may work better, and same thing, 4 to 6, and we'll go from I'm going to check what I wrote on the other one now. It'll be 3,500, 3, 5 to 6, 5, which may or may not be correct for this engine. Of course, we'll only know that on a rolling road, that's for sure. So let's check we've got that the right way around. So RPM 1, RPM 1 is the bottom of this funny shaped thing, and RPM 2 is the top of this funny shaped thing. Okay, so go back to where we were a second ago. And we've got our primary load 2, so we're going to raise that. Well, actually, you know what? I do need to be able to test it on the road, so it means that rather than being 100% load, I'm going to put it at 80% load, and at least we'll see if it's working. That's important. So I'll just check I got this one correct on the VVT-A. Oh, I did actually. Yeah, I was a bit concerned. I'd put this figure at 4.5 rather than 3.5, but that's correct. All right. Well, it's correct for the purpose that I want to do it anyway. All right. So that's good, and we can only really find out how well it works on the road. However, there's also another thing which is to do with the IMT, which I'll need to come back to. Something which I found only this morning. Yeah, something called VIX. Now it appears that VIX is a bit like IMT. It's a system used by Mazda on an MX-5 to alter the inlet tract. Now I don't know whether it's very, very similar to this or not, but it could be. So let's go back to our settings again. So IMT, so I'm going to choose the top one, which I think is on that relay number 2. So closed up until 3,500 and then open and then closed again. So closed, open, closed. So come back to that setting on here. So 3.5 in there. I don't know why it says 15,000. To, what was it? It's like 6,250. Let's put 6,000. Like 5,500 then. The same reasons as before. And enabled no. Right, so now we need to go to our outputs, and we'll choose that at the top IMT valve, which is currently on. We're going to choose, instead of off or anything else, we're going to choose VIX relay, which may or may not be the right thing to do, but we'll find out. So we've got now possibly a hybrid Jaguar, Honda, Mazda type of setup, which may or may not prove to be a good thing, but we'll have to test. And actually, no, we've already done that. We had the test thing a minute ago. So unfortunately, the Mazda system only has one of these rather than the 2 stages, which is what the Jaguar has. So this may or may not prove to be a goer, basically. And the same applies actually to the VVT, because as we know, it's running on PWM, which may or may not be the correct thing to do. And I have got work in progress, an Arduino based thing, which may be more appropriate for simple on-off stuff. But anyway, we'll come to that when I've got that working. Enabled. Actually, I'll do, yes, I need to put, yes, I do want it enabled as well. Alright, enabled. And we don't want it inverted, although we could do. Alright, so let's have, let's put in there VIX, even though it's not strictly to do with VVT. VIX status off. There we go. So we can put an extra thing on this screen, so when I'm driving along I can actually see what's going on. So we'll find out in due course whether that works any better than it did before. I mean, it drove quite well. I'll still leave us the remaining problem to do with lambda, which I have now got a new wideband sensor. Right, this is my wideband sensor, which I removed, and rather black it is, but you wouldn't necessarily think it had failed. However, a bit of research reveals that they're in fact known for failing, particularly when they get wet due to condensation in the exhaust. And it does actually say to mount them, I think, between the 10 and the 2 position on the pipe, so basically up at the top of the pipe, which mine is, because I did realise there's some sense of at least the thing not being drowned in water, but being splashed with water is a different thing. And on my car, the mounting position is, I don't know, it's right down here somewhere. I don't know if you can see it or not. It's quite far back. So I'm struggling still with VVT. Now you might have seen, depends which ones I choose to put in the edit, but you might have seen that the traces for especially cam angle B current advance were all over the place, going from negative to positive, very, very unstable. And cam angle A actually wasn't brilliant either. So I'm not sure exactly what that means, but one thing I'm going to do is look at the diagnostic screen, which shows the sensors basically from the engine. So I'm going to start it now. I'll bring up the diagnostics. Okay, that'll do. So here we have crank. Oh, I need to have crank B up as well. Interestingly, that is not there by default. And I'm not setting that to Okay, so now if I zoom out, yes, so I'm able to zoom out now. So we see the trigger on the crank coming through, which is at 36 minus 1. And what I'm trying to see is an identifiable pattern on the on the camshaft, which I'll zoom down a bit. There we go. Okay, so that's 36 minus 1. So each one of these black lines where there's a missing tooth represents one rotation of the crank. And because the crank goes round twice as fast as the cams, because this is a 4-stroke engine, it means that between there and there is one rotation of the camshaft. Okay, so we got short, short, long, long, short, short, long, long. Okay, so that's the pattern. It looks like on the cam A, short, short, long, long, short, short, long, long. If I zoom out a bit further, yeah, short, short, long, long, short, short, long, long. All right, so that is the AJ30 pattern. So what about cam B then? Is it the same? Having said that it was random previously, and it does look like it is short, short, long, long, short, short, long, long, short, short, long, long, but it's offset from cam A by this much. So what does this mean? So it's not a random set of spikes at all. We've got long, 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 short, short, long, long, short, short, and the same one can be long, long, short, short, long, long, short, short. So it looks like cam A and cam B are the same as each other. Right, we're going to do another test drive, and I'm going to see if I can do some screen recording and get it to work this time. We're going to select the VVT screen, which has also got the VIX on it. Right, let's see if I can get this recording to last with the battery.
hope you enjoyed that. That was by far the most successful test drive, because no traffic lights. So what remains for me to do now is to stop this recording, and hopefully we'll have something to look at later on.